Welcome in the arena. My name's Allyson Klein, and today we have a humdinger of a topic for you. It's post-quantum cryptography. This is a topic that I think needs to be talked about more in the industry, and it's one that we definitely want to give a focus to on TechArena. To do this, we have two amazing guests with us. We've got our own Robert Bielby, as well as Scott Best, Senior Director of Silicon Security Products at Rambus. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thanks for the invite.
Let's just start with introductions. Robert, you've been on the show before. You write on TechArena platform quite a bit, but why don't you give a perspective on your background?
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Executive summaries, I've been about 35 years plus in the silicon industry, semiconductor industry, primarily in the areas of programmable logic technologies. And currently I am vice president of embedded FPGA startup by the name of Chameleon Semiconductor. And we've been looking at key applications for reprogrammable silicon. And one of those that comes up is really this area of post-quantum cryptography. So Allison, Scott, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much. And Scott?
Yeah, so I think 35 years is the number I'm going to go with as well. I started life in mixed signal circuit design, and I've been at Rambus for almost all of my career now. There's a remainder at the end, but it's been almost 30 years with Rambus doing mixed signal circuit design, advanced memory architectures, and more recently into the hardware security. I found myself moving out somewhat out of engineering and into the product side of the world, where product side of the world has a little bit more of the customer interface part to it and requires that ability of communicating the technology to the customers, and then requires being able to communicate customers' concern back to the technology developers, which turns out some feel I have a facility for. So.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to dive in. You know, I was thinking about this topic this morning, and it was a few years ago that I was out with a bunch of tech geeks in Portland, and we were talking about different trends. And one of the guys at the table said, well, you know that cryptography is going to break as soon as quantum computing becomes a scalable reality, right? And that kind of shut down the conversation as everyone said, oh. So let's start there. Level set on that. In simple terms, what is post-quantum cryptography and why is it needed? Who wants to start?
I would throw that to the expert, Scott.
All right. Your friend, your geek friend was not wrong. I think I know that guy, by the way. I've been in this industry long enough that I think I know him. What's bizarre about post-quantum computers is that, well, they're really not computers. They're machines that can be programmed to perform algorithms. And some mathematicians have come up with algorithms for the potential future computers. Now, these algorithms can be run on normal computers as well, but they don't perform terrifically well on normal computers. But in the existence of a quantum computer, these algorithms will also perform. And what they discovered was that there are shortcuts that can be done on a quantum computer that attack the very long-lived 30-plus years of the public key type of cryptography that is used for almost everything. I mean, whenever you're connecting a browser to your, to your bank or to E-Trade or anything of a secure connection, whenever that little lock comes up, there is a momentary exchange of a symmetric key between you and the other side, and that exchange involves a public key algorithm. Whenever you download a firmware update, whenever you install a game on your phone, all of those firmware updates are all signed to attest to their authenticity using public key algorithms. And for 30 years, that's been fine because we knew these algorithms have existed for a very long time, that potentially someday a quantum computer might be able to run them. And a staggering amount of progress has been made in the last 5 to 8 years in building these actual quantum computers. So now there is that risk that Q-Day is going to happen before 2030, that people are now looking and saying, wait, we're actually going to have a computer capable of performing these algorithms, which we know we know that they work. We just haven't had the hardware in order to execute these algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
And should a malicious adversary have access to these, then could a malicious adversary start publishing operating system updates for your computer that are completely fictional?
Mm-hmm.
Could they record and capture the private web traffic between financial institutions and now decrypt it into the plain text? There's all sorts of existential risks that now start appearing a lot more real and not speculative.
Well, I think it's interesting because we fast forward in time from that, wine dinner that I was having that night. And the White House just issued an executive order mandating PQC migration, post quantum cryptography, for those who are not following the PQC. And Google has come out and said, hey, this is actually going to happen much sooner than expected. I think that's what you were referring to, Scott, in that quantum computers are becoming more and more of a reality, and we expect that they'll have that capability before 2030. You guys are at the center of this landscape. Do you think organizations are moving fast enough to get ready for this moment?
Well, I personally don't think so, to be honest. And there's kind of a chicken and an egg problem here because while at the end of the day, there have been a number of different proposals for algorithms that are going to be believed to be, quantum proof. How's that, boy? In reality, nobody really knows. And for the time that it takes to actually create an ASIC and get it into the market, you really have to have something that's nailed down now that can support, cryptography or PQC capabilities, that has the agility that's going to survive, whatever happens once we find out what cryptographic relevant computers are capable of doing. I think, one of the things that this executive order kind of mandates is that, we're now moving from just planning for this threat to actually enforcing hard deadlines. The immediate action now is that every government agency, must have a specific PQC lead that's required to make sure that PQC is in fact being addressed within the organization. I'm sure Scott can add more color and context to this as well.
You're absolutely right that there is a strong press especially over the last few months, especially in response to the recent executive order out of Washington, D.C., that there's a lot of interest now in a strong transition. But at the same time, the transition has been occurring quietly and in the background and transparent to most individual users. Well, maybe not completely transparent. If you remember all of the you may have noticed over the last 2 years, you've installed hundreds of web browser updates. Chrome needs to restart, and you have to press it again and again and again. But your web browser is now speaking quantum safe protocols when it is connecting to those little icons with a little lock on them. And that has been quietly slipped into the background of, the internet infrastructure. There's roughly 60% of secure traffic right now is using quantum safe protocols, which is great. So there are ways of deploying this, quietly in the background over the span of years. And fortunately, that's been ongoing.
Maybe just to hit on one point, Allyson, which I don't think I really touched on, which is kind of the timing, if you will. And one of the things beyond just an executive order being, put in place to, try to speed things along, I think it was back in like 2012 where, it was believed that it was going to take, 1 billion qubits to break the standard, RSA encryption. By 2019, that dropped to 20 million qubits. And this is really the capability, this measures the capability of a quantum computer It is now believed that with 1 million noisy bits, traditional encryption can be cracked in less than a week. So, basically what's happening is less and less compute performance is it's believed to be required to actually crack elliptical coding. And it seems like every year or every other year, that timeline keeps getting smaller and smaller. So we really need to start to move a lot quicker than we thought, because again, the timelines are getting pulled in because what's required to crack the code from a compute capability
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the acceleration, is that there's been such an advancement in keeping these quantum computers, keeping the qubits, in a state of, coherence for the duration that it takes to complete the algorithm.
Mhm.
And all of these surface codes that go into making sure that that occurs for long. That's been the fundamental progress that has been made over quantum computers, is the number of qubits and the duration of their coherence with these advanced error codes. I also wanted to add that, I spoke in a bit broad terms earlier. It's not all cryptography falls over in the face of quantum computers. It's specifically two algorithms that we live and breathe by over the last 30 years, including elliptic curve and RSA. And
That
those
doesn't
are two.
feel better.
It's slightly, because there's other algorithms that, like, after the key exchange is complete and both sides have the same key, now you transition to normal symmetric algorithms like AES. AES not a problem. AES does not suffer in the face of a quantum computer. Not all cryptography falls over, but that key exchange part, or signature stuff, or anything involving the signature on a certificate, all of those right now, as Robert was saying, need to be updated probably a bit more quickly than anyone thought. Certainly 5 years ago, and even to the point of maybe a year ago, some people were, taking their foot off the gas, which needs to be now reapplied.
Okay. So Scott, with that,
Mm.
every time I prep for a security episode, I'm like, oh, ignorance.
Oh no.
But there is a concept called harvest now, decrypt later, and it's not like
Sure.
the bad actors haven't known that this was coming, and they have been, stealing encrypted data with this sense that at some point they can unlock it. When
Yes.
you look at that and you think about the attack surface that has already been claimed, what is the size of the threat? Do we even know?
No. I mean, the size of the threat, you're absolutely right that people have known that over the last 10 years that Q Day was coming.
Mhm.
And there were some malicious people, as well as some, what you might consider to be, periodically friendly governments have been harvesting the encrypted traffic of the internet, saying someday we're going to have the algorithms that let us break that initial handshake, right? That initial handshake where a key is established. And once we have that key, we can now decrypt the entire session between these two agencies. And whether those be banks, whether those be governments, it's probably not, you're not going to spend $1 billion in quantum computer time to look at my email. That is a staggeringly dull use of $1 billion, I can assure you. I will give you my email for far less than $1 billion. So the scope of the threat is that you don't really know what is in the wires that is 10 years old that still has present day value to it. And that's why it makes it very difficult to put your finger on a number and say, yes, this is a $57 billion risk. This is an existential risk to that banking organization or to that government. It's difficult to know because what has actually transpired in those wires on those secure comms that we don't already have already, because occasionally people print out their emails and they're obtained by court documents already, and the whole,
Right.
what the Panama Papers actually found actually existed in plain text rather than being communicated securely. So there's a genuine unknown to what's been in the wires the last 10 years.
Now, Robert, you've been in the silicon game for a long time. We recently saw a NIST DSA candidate cracked in a few hours with a single core CPU. when you look at something like that and you think about where we need to get to, how dangerous is it to put PQC algorithms into rigid hardwired silicon today when you know that silicon is going to exist in the wild for multiple years?
Well, I don't want to be an alarmist, and also to be fair, programmable logic exists in the areas of chaos, and this is actually an area of a lot of chaos with very high stakes, where things haven't been ironed out. And yeah, there's been, Scott had mentioned both. There's two pieces to the equation. There's a key management, and there's digital signature side of the equation, and candidates both for key management and digital signature algorithms have indeed been cracked. One was called Psych, and it took about 62 minutes to crack the algorithm using a standard CPU, and even digital signature. There was an algorithm called Rainbow that took the better part of a weekend to crack, again, using off-the-shelf CPUs. Google and NVIDIA and Microsoft and AMD have put together an open source core called Calyptra that's focused on trying to address PQC in the data center. And in fact, Microsoft requires that any products shipped to them hardware-wise is based on Calyptra. And what's been determined with Calyptra is that there's something called Adam's Bridge that actually is leaky from a side channel perspective. Long and short of it is that, there are already candidates that have gone through lots and lots of rigor with some of the industry's best and brightest minds, and yet we continue to find that they're cracked. And this is in the case where we actually don't have quantum computing and available to us. We're using standard off-the-shelf single core, multi-core CPUs. With the advent now of AI and quantum computing bundled, part of the reasons that some of these codes were cracked was based on the fact that somebody had come across an algorithm that was written in a paper that was hidden away for decades. And when they came across it, they applied it, and suddenly, things were cracked. So now you take AI, which can scour every piece of information that's ever been produced, and combine that with quantum computing, you're really setting yourself up for failure. And the line rates that PQC operates at or needs to operate at really don't make it well suited for, standard software upgrades with CPUs. And so that's why I'm firmly convinced that hardware-based programmability is essential to be able to roll with the punches, as what we're seeing right now is that it appears as though it's inevitable that codes are going to get cracked. But maybe I'm too much of an alarmist, and I would love to hear a balance from Scott, because I certainly I do have a dog in this game, or in this fight, I should say.
So, a slightly different perspective, and perhaps inundated with a heavy dose of copium here. I enjoy that these attacks are happening on these protocols. I mean, when NIST, for example, does an outreach and has people propose algorithms, and those algorithms they have to go through several years of screening process, including this type of penetration attacks. And it's really important that one knows that some algorithms have been defeated and have fallen over in the face of non-quantum classical penetration techniques, that these algorithms had an exploitable weakness to them. And those algorithms have been set aside. And the ones that have not fallen over in the face of those attacks have been certified by NIST as currently safe for use, or at least safe for deployment right now, that they are at least as secure as the legacy protocols. And they are, by all things we currently understand, quantum resistant, that they do not fall over in the face of Shor's algorithm, which is the one that takes apart RSA and elliptic curve currently. So I enjoy that these attacks happen. I also enjoy the AI part. There's Microsoft released, this was just a press release, I think I saw it last week, end of last week, like one of their largest bug fix updates in the history of the company. And they found those bug fix updates because people are now using generative AI tools to scour the entirety of human knowledge that they've been trained on. And you find all of the esoteric attacks and the esoteric 0 days that have gone unpatched for years. And now one can index them and find them more quickly. Yes, the adversaries can find them, but so can, the good guys in that argument can also find them more quickly. There's far fewer secrets and obfuscation of those techniques now. And I'm maybe over reluctantly optimistic about that.
So, Allyson, can I assume your role for a second, please, and ask
Sure.
Scott a question?
Of course you can.
Oh no.
No, it's all good. All is fair in love and war, and apparently post quantum cryptography. So NIST is mandating that agility is required. The primary algorithms that are being employed for key management and digital signature are lattice based. But then they're also saying, well, in case those fail, we're going to have key management based on Hammond code or Galois field arithmetic, and digital signature is going to be based upon failover, is going to be hashing. So they're already building in diversity with some expectation or concern that lattice-based arithmetic could indeed get cracked. So how do you rationalize that against, well, it's rock solid, but yet we do require agility, and then we do have backup approaches in case the primary approaches fail? I mean, that doesn't instill confidence in me, but again, I've got a dog in this fight.
If I used the phrase rock solid during my previous missive there, then I need to withdraw that. It's currently better. It's at least as secure as what we have over the last 30 years. It's at least as secure as that, given all known cryptographic penetration techniques. And we understand it to be currently quantum resistant because it is immune to the known algorithms that we have. That does not mean that new penetrations and new algorithms aren't going to emerge. I mean, you described earlier the side channel leakage of these algorithms. Well, pretty much all crypto algorithms have a side channel leakage problem to them. And that is more of a key recovery mechanism than it is an algorithmic flaw. One can patch the hardware that's performing these computations. One can even, to some degree, manipulate the software so that it doesn't leak key information. But that's going to happen with any algorithm going forward. No algorithm is going to be immune from these side channel leaks. No algorithm is probably going to survive forever. So yes, crypto agility about being able to say that we have studied lattice-based math. I mean, we all probably looked at it in probably not middle school. I forget when we actually started working with matrices and determinants. Was that high school? It might have been high school math. And we were like, when are we ever going to use this stuff? Well, it turns out like people have been studying this kind of math for going on 100 years, and there's no algorithmic shortcuts to those types of lattice structures that we know of today that could execute on the quantum computers that we are building today. So yes, we might have, Q2 day. There's Q day is coming in 2029. Q2 day is probably coming sometime after that. And we're going to have crypto agility, and we're going to have to update systems again. Because the innovation on both sides, the innovation on both the algorithms and the ability to attack these algorithms, it would be nice if everybody could just take a few years off of attacking the algorithms. But yeah, as mentioned earlier, in the advent of having AI tools that have been programmed on the totality of human knowledge, yes, everything that was esoteric and obscure is now available at simple command prompts. And that casts all of this in a new light and adds a whole, patina of urgency to the work that we're doing to update these protocols, deploy them widely, and continue the work, right? Continue the mission of trying to secure microelectronic systems with strong algorithms and, as Robert was saying, with crypto agility.
So before we get too far, Robert, and even though you mentioned side channel and you know that I worked at Intel, I've got a circle back question for you, which is programmable silicon. You know, you talked about it in your earlier answer, and I know that Chameleon is definitely a lead player there. Why is this such an important and powerful option for us in terms of getting ready for Q Day and Scott's now determined Q2 day?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of both being able to support the line rates that we're expecting the encryption to operate at, as well as the complexity of the math itself. And so basically the vision is that a rational solution would be based upon programmable logic combined with hardened math engines that take on the general mathematics that are being employed in encryption, and then using the embedded FPGA as basically control logic to sequence so on and so forth, those hardened math engines. And by a combination of the two, you're able to achieve very, very high performance with a very nimble response to different encryption algorithms as appropriate or as they change. What we have seen in technical white papers is that if you throw standard CPUs at the problem, you will see at least a 600x speed up improvement in building a hardware-based accelerator versus just implementing a traditional CPU and then updating that CPU with a new algorithm. So it's really the mix of flexibility and performance that it delivers, and performance because the line rates are high, and performance because the math is really, 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 really hard. And we can accommodate both of those problems quite eloquently, again, along with the flexibility to roll with the punches.
Scott, I want your perspective on this. You know, when you look at Rambus's history and security IP, you have a multi-decade history here. How do you guys look at the combination of fixed function silicon for this space that offers some advantages from performance efficiency and other vectors, and the desperate need for field upgradability at this moment?
That's a solid question. As we talked about earlier, your web browser is now running quantum safe protocols. There was no new hardware installed in your computer when those updates went. Those are software-based libraries that are now compliant to FIPS 203, 204 standards for key exchange and signature verification. Microsoft is almost certainly signing their operating systems now with quantum safe protocols, all with no new hardware, right? Your laptop is capable of executing those algorithms. And that's sufficient for a lot of applications. It's running these apps running these protocols with software libraries. The problem with software, and this is the basis of how and why Rambus got into the hardware security business, is that software is malleable. Software can be untrusted. Software can be changed by definition. And that gives a lot more attack surfaces when anybody malicious is trying to compromise a system's encryption, is by going after the software libraries. So what is far more secure is committed hardware, which is indelible hardware that has been baked into the silicon. And anything out there that requires that, a secure internet connection or like a firmware update, which currently, I think includes my dishwasher, right? I was changing the Wi-Fi recently and put on and I was looking up the network name, and suddenly my dishwasher connects to the network, and I'm like, dishwasher is checking itself for
Your
firmware
dishwasher's
updates.
gonna go rogue. Yes.
It's gonna go rogue. Now it's going to install firmware, and what I don't want it to do is install malicious firmware and start running malware for any particular reason. I don't even want to imagine what a malicious dishwasher could possibly do. The point is that hardware becomes indelible and software is overly flexible. And what I love about Chameleon's technology is that it bridges that gap of how do you push new hardware into fielded devices so that if the algorithm is updated, if we decide 3 years from now that Falcon is the solution, and everybody wants a Falcon core in their deployed systems, then using technology like Chameleon, one could push a new hardware image into the programmable hardware structures. And now you're not really running it in software, and it's not exactly hardware. It's not an indelible engine that cannot be changed, right? It's mutable hardware. And that gives a lot of flexibility, especially in uncertain times like this. So we find that there's a need for all three of those. There's a need for software to get something deployed quickly. There's a need for indelible hardware if one needs an actual to trust something that cannot be in any way easily modified whatsoever, the indelible hardware, and then embedded FPGA technology that bridges the gap between those two for reasons of agility.
Now, Scott, I want to circle back to you because you talked about Microsoft's recent update and the
Mhm.
fact that they're using Gen AI to find potential challenges in their code and potential exploits. But
Mhm.
the thing that you kind of said, but kind of didn't really spend a lot of time on, is that the bad actors have AI too. And while
Yeah.
was going to just be a post quantum cryptographic conversation, I want to open up the aperture a little bit and say, what is the impact of AI in terms of our attack surfaces? What are they doing with AI? Is it just looking for mathematical vulnerabilities? Or are they actually breaking primitives? What are you seeing, and how do we protect ourselves now that the landscape has changed and there's this most powerful tool ever for security breaches?
Mhm. Um, well, there's both, I suppose, different flavors of good news and bad news, and different flavors of bad news. Um, Fortunately, the generative AI tools they don't really know anything. I mean, it is to a large degree, they're impersonating expertise.
Right.
So, but at the same time, it's been trained on the entirety of human existence. So if somebody wrote a clever malware attack and it was published in an obscure Taiwanese journal 5 years ago that nobody read, AI tools have read it, and AI tools now have it. So the scope has expanded dramatically because of these, otherwise unintelligent tools that make for fantastic catalogers of human knowledge. So that's a problem for somebody maliciously intended. But the other part of the good news is that I don't think there's any cryptographer who's actually working in this industry that doesn't occasionally, you know, put on a red hat, next to their black hat, right? They are pen testing, not only their own algorithms, but their peers' algorithms, because they understand the nature of the attack and they're using these same force multiplier tools on a day-to-day basis. I've never met a cryptographer that didn't have that slight glint in their eye because they know what they would do to actually attack an algorithm. They have to understand the attack surface in order to build a defensive surface. And I suppose that's also a good thing, that the force multiplier is applying to both, that you are going to get malicious actors, but I think you're also going to get, beneficial actors, and that, spy versus spy or cat versus mouse, move, counter move, the red black team. And I find that encouraging, but perhaps I'm going to the wrong conferences, and they need to be in the room filled with people that are just trying to pen test the system.
Robert, how do you feel about this in terms of your ability to sleep at night?
I think I spend too much time staring at the TMZ headlines, and it's all about sensationalism and so on and so forth. So I believe somewhere in between the truth lies, and I think I really appreciate Scott's balanced perspective on things, and On one hand, as Scott points out, we've got a lot of PQC that's being deployed today, albeit we don't have quote unquote cryptographic relevant quantum computing to crack some of this stuff. In the next breath, I do note the fact that there have been multiple failed attempts by NIST to introduce algorithms that have been cracked either within an hour or within a weekend. They mandate agility, and they also propose diversity of algorithms as a way to get around perhaps lattice-based math being cracked. So I kind of sit in the middle of all of this when I put my Chameleon hat on. This is obviously an exciting space to be, and it's great to be able to provide a solution to a problem that will have such an impact. Because I think the basic premise was that the math associated with current cryptography was so complex that it would take like 1 trillion years to crack encryption, and we rely on encryption for everything. And now what we're saying is that those algorithms can be cracked in minutes with quantum computing. So I say I personally fit in the middle of this, but as a representative of Chameleon, I'm excited that we have an opportunity to help address a challenge that obviously has got the attention of, the government and global, entities worldwide. So it's a problem.
All right. So this has been an uplifting episode. Thank you guys for real. I mean, this is such an important topic, and I don't think that we're talking about it enough. I have a bonus round question for you.
Wow.
If there's one immediate action that you want architectural designers to take today to avoid a complete security fail and existential crisis tomorrow, what is it? Robert, go first.
Not as an advertisement, but as an advertisement, we do have a white paper that you can download from our website that walks through post-quantum cryptography and rational ways of implementing solutions that are based upon hardware that provide resiliency, and at least give the paper a read. And, personally, I would love feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, but I think it provides a rational perspective on how to future-proof systems. And like I said, the solution is not just pour infinite embedded FPGA at the problem. It's really architecting a solution that's a mix of hardware and fixed hardware and embedded solutions. So, and we touch on that in the white paper. So that would be my ask, not because I'm trying to promote Chameleon, but I think it's just a good thing to have in your quiver, if you will.
Scott, what would you like to add?
I guess I would like to add just that I agree entirely with the crypto agility efforts that Chameleon is working on, and it's part of, I mentioned it earlier that Rambus security has a commitment to hardware-based security. That if you're running algorithms in software, those are malleable algorithms, and one cannot trust software without actually having somewhere in that trust hierarchy, somewhere it goes down to the root of that trust is an indelible piece of hardware. And that's essential. The other part to that is that, and I would just like to add that not all hardware security is created equal. There's hardware security that is built to be tamper resistant, and there's some hardware security that you can, for example, go on to GitHub and download for free. And there's different degrees of quality, and I think vendors and governments and users have to evaluate, like, what is the risk to me? What is the risk to me and my company? What is the risk to my company's brand if we end up on those TMZ headlines, right? If we end up being that company that chose to not take tamper-resistant hardware security seriously, and now we're the ones that are at the forefront of a TMZ compromise, that's not a good place to be. And the solutions exist, right? There's people that are actually working on these types of problems, these types of solutions to make them commercially fieldable to prevent that risk. And I think it's, it's genuinely an important reason why, hardware security companies, exist in the market, is to address that risk and to service the customers that take it seriously. And we love those customers that actually are genuine about it, take it seriously, and want to solve the problem and are committed to that particular part of the mission, saying, yeah, well, our systems will be secure when they're fielded.
Yeah, Scott, that last point is so important. I think that my call to action here is for those who are in the value chain of delivering computing capabilities and those who are managing IT departments, educate yourself. Educate yourself about this upcoming threat and what the industry is doing holistically. And if you are operating IT equipment, talk to your vendors about what they're doing to integrate capabilities into your solutions to protect you. Because I think that that call for urgent action is what will erase Robert's earlier statement about we're not collectively working fast enough or with the serious intent enough um, to navigate this situation. Thank you guys for being on today. It was a pleasure. Final bit for you. Where can folks find you to continue the dialogue? Scott, go first.
Oh, I'm on rambus.com somewhere. I think there's a rambus.com/inventors page that, for reasons I don't understand, my picture ended up on, but you can certainly find me there.
And
And
Robert?
you can email or call, but you should email.
All right. And Robert?
Same thing, website, Chameleon, oneword.com, and you can just email directly to that address. There's a place to ask questions, and be more than happy to have a conversation with anyone who's interested to do so.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both so much for the time. I know that you're busy people. This has been a fantastic interview and can't wait to get this one out on the internet to get reactions from our community. Thanks so much.
Thanks for hosting, Allyson. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.